spent some time being uncomfortable to prepare. I slept in the trunk of my car last night.
I was going to ask if you took a cold shower this morning.
Cold shower. Yeah. I'm wearing clothes that aren't mine or too small.
Sleep on a bed of nails last night.
In the trunk of my car. Yeah.
Man, you are committed to this work.
Yeah. Like
you.
method actors, I'm a method podcaster.
Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Erin Green.
And I am Michael Gray.
Thanks for that countdown, Michael Gray.
Mm-hmm.
Usually Michael does a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and he tried to start at 10 this time, and I was like, oh, this is going to be a long countdown.
And then it was 30, and then it was 3, 2, 1.
and then you went 30. So do you remember that scene on Along Came Polly? Do you know that movie with Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston? And he's trying, so it's a bedroom scene, and he's really trying to hold off so he's not premature. And he's like, it shows like him crossing his toes and his curling his feet and like trying. And in his head, there's like this monologue of him counting down. And then he goes, 60. I think that's what he crawls out at the end. And she's like, okay, 60. And she like kind of jumps on it. And then she's asking her girlfriend later, have you ever had a guy yell that out? And so I just had this vision when you're like 30. I was like, oh my God, that scene from Along Came Polly just popped in my head. Gotta love the good old socially awkward Ben Stiller scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're off to a start.
I know.
And it was you. It wasn't me. It's usually me that kicks us. Woo.
Let's just say you prompted that though with your
I'm sure it's my fault.
antics.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So
yeah,
antics. You're sure it's your fault.
My antics are the issue. I'm sure.
You just accept responsibility.
Yeah, I'm just fully. It's just
good job.
Yep, that's just the way it is.
You're such a good partner.
I think my favorite scene. Okay, I haven't seen that movie for a long time, but one of my favorite scenes is right at the beginning when Philip Seymour Hoffman is walking across the dance floor. He's so good, so hard. Like, I don't know if it was acting. Like, was it real? Because he freaking falls so hard.
Honestly, he's so good in that movie. And I miss that man so much because he played the character so well. And when he's shooting baskets, and he's calling out the shots and just bombing every single one and missing it. And is so awkward. And they're trying to have like this serious conversation while he's just shooting baskets, like airballing and like throwing it against the backboard as hard as he can and calling it out. Oh my God. That's a great movie. I'm gonna have to watch that again.
Gosh, it's been a long time. I think since it came out or right around when it came out.
You gotta love those funny movies that are just kind of brainless and they have like slapstick humor and they have some of the funny like side stories and one-liners that you don't even catch until you watch it like 5 or 6 times. And you're like, oh my God, like that's a really good line.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a hard question, but what's your favorite movie? All-time favorite movie? I don't like these questions. I don't like narrowing it down to one. So not all-time favorite. What's one of your all-time favorite movies? That's a fair question.
One of my all-time favorites. This isn't a funny movie, but I have always loved the Shawshank Redemption. I love the movie. I love the story. No, but all-time, you asked for all-time favorite movie, and that's one of them where I'm just every time it's on, like if I'm scrolling through the channels or something and that's on, I'll stop and watch it, even if there's commercials and whatnot. Just, I love the story and I love the way they put it together and like the twist at the end. And you got to love like when, redemption, like a story of redemption and like the underdog finally getting. So I love that one.
Fantastic
humor.
Movie.
Geez, anything with Chris Farley in it. I love
Tommy Boy.
I think Tommy Boy. I've got so many lines from Tommy Boy that I just love. So anyway,
yeah.
How about you? Great. Do you have a favorite?
Shawshank Redemption has to be right up there. That's the movie I saw the most in the theater. I think I saw it
Oh,
in
yeah.
like 3 days, 5 or 6 times.
Yeah.
Because I was staying with my brother. He was in college. I was still in high school. I was staying with him for the weekend. And we went and saw it and we're like, holy crap, this movie's amazing. So I think
Yeah.
like we saw it again and we were talking to somebody about like, is it really good? Or like, let's go, you got to see it. And it wound up being like, it was like 5 or 6 times because we talked to people about it. And like, maybe we need to
Hmm.
go. I was like, let's go. Maybe it was like a week, maybe it was a week, but it was like 5 or 6 times in a very short amount of time. I don't know that I've ever seen a movie twice in a theater aside from that. But yeah,
I think
it
I
was
saw
just like,
Titanic
just,
in the theater like 5 or 6 times just because
did
we
you?
would go as a group. Yeah. I mean, I would
Mhm.
go like as a group with different friends. And so everybody wanted to go. And I'd be like, sure, I'll go
Yeah.
watch that again. So,
Yeah, same kind of
yeah.
thing. Yeah. But no, that's got to be one of the best movies ever. And then one of my favorites, just for fun, is Snatched. Have you ever seen Snatched?
Oh God, Matt loves that movie.
I
And
love Snatched.
I have
It's so
not
fun.
gotten, I just have not gotten into it. And I know there's a
Yeah.
whole cult following. I'll watch it. Like if I
Hmm.
watch it with somebody, I think it's one of those
Hmm.
movies I would watch with somebody and probably enjoy it a lot more than if I would never like sit down and just watch it myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
love Snatched. It's great.
that's a good one.
Yeah.
Matt is chomping at the bit for Dune to be released. I think it's tomorrow that Dune comes out.
I hadn't heard about it and I just saw
Oh,
like
geez.
the movie poster for it on like Facebook or something. I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
this looks rad. Like just from the movie
So
poster.
it has, well, it came out what in the 80s or
Hmm.
something. It was the original. And so, of course, Matt, because that's his like generation where he was watching that kind of stuff, he has been waiting for this remake and it was supposed to be released, I think, last December, and then it wasn't. And he has been bitching about it ever since. Like, when are they going to release this movie? And finally it's here. And so he's just like, he can't wait. So, yeah.
Nice. I'm trying to think if I ever saw the original. I feel like I did. I don't know. It's a long time ago if I did, but I don't even know the story. But it looks cool.
I don't. He's like, you might like it. I'm like, I
I'm
might.
like, I might not.
Kind of a big commitment if I don't, because it's like 2.5 hours or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
that's like a
Mm,
significant part of your life.
yeah. I'm not sure. Not sure. So,
Yeah.
let's see. What else? Anything else cool going on in your life right now?
I got so much cool going on in my life. Like, I'm about cooled out.
Oh, off
Yeah.
the hook.
Off the hook with cool. I sound so cool right now.
Yeah.
I
It's very
Things are off the
convincing.
hook with cool in my life. I'm a hip dad.
Yo.
For
Oh my
shizzle.
God.
Off the hook with cool. No, I don't know. No, things are good. Just kind of standard normal stuff. Oh, I got summoned for jury duty, so that's fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
Yeah.
That's only happened to me once, knock
It's my
on
first time
wood.
ever.
It's only happened to me once. And then I got dismissed. Like I never had to go in. I just had to call every morning to see. And then I never had to
Yeah.
go in for selection. And I
Mhm.
have friends that have gotten summoned like 6 or 7 times in the last,
Really?
10 years. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm like, how does that happen? It has to be, the system has to be kind of
I don't know.
jacked,
I've
right?
never been summoned before. This is my first. So, yeah, interesting.
Good luck with
See how it
that.
goes. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I get like a real high profile murder case.
Tell some dad jokes. See if that
I will.
helps with your selection.
Just be like really interruptive.
Interrupt.
Tell jokes in the middle
Oh,
of
I
like,
love it.
opening
Yeah.
arguments or something. Yeah.
Just stand up and start
Can I
doing
go to,
your
can I go to the
like,
bathroom? Can I go to
yeah.
the bathroom?
Are there snacks? Did anybody bring snacks?
Anyone have Imodium? I have explosive diarrhea.
Oh dear.
Yeah. But the
So
cool thing is
that
they pay $6 a day. So, I mean,
well, that could pay for your Imodium.
it could. Yeah. And like, 25% of my gas to get there. So that's awesome. It's like
Oh,
serious
that's
$6.
great.
Like, What's an amount that's as
What's
insulting?
the point of that? Why would they pay $6 a day? Like, who came up with that idea and justified it in any meaningful way?
It's a real dick move. Like,
It's
just
yeah, it's
just
like a
don't pay
slap in the
me.
face.
I'd rather
I
have them just
know.
be like, this, and this is your responsibility. Do it. Okay.
Yeah,
Here's $30 for the week when you've had to miss, your whole week of working and providing for
right,
your family. Here's
right.
$30. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Anyway. All
yeah,
right.
that's awkward. Weird.
Yeah. You good? Things good there?
Yeah, we've had some Indian summer kind of weather, which has been really nice. It's sort of cloudy and blustery today, so I'm not really sure what's going on because it was supposed to be, I think, pretty much sunny until we
Mhm.
have like this whole system of rain coming. Um, so yeah, we've been enjoying the out of doors. And Matt, this is part of my meeting in the mundane, but I'll just share that Matt installed a little cat topper
Oh, yeah.
thing on our fence for rally, and he promptly figured out how to get over the damn thing. And we were like, oh my God. I mean, it's like a 6-foot fence, but he climbed onto our air conditioning unit and just got brave enough to launch himself and see if it happened. And it happened where he got over. And I was like, oh my God. And Matt spent the better part of the Sunday doing this. And so
He's a freedom
he's just
fighter
like, you little
fighting for his
shit.
freedom.
And the funny thing was, he didn't dart away. We just opened the gate and Matt kind of walked around him and herded him back into the yard, and he was fine. Like, it was like he wanted to be like, yeah, bitches, I can do
Yeah.
this.
He's
Don't
like, yeah,
even
all
think,
right,
don't
I
even
can do
think
it.
for a minute. Yeah.
I can do it. I'm still in charge.
So, so we've kind of jerry rigged the situation with the AC unit, because we're not going to be using the AC unit anytime soon anyway. So it doesn't matter if,
Right.
so we kind of fixed it so he can't jump the fence right now. So anyway,
That's
that
funny.
was our house project. We're trying to do like a little house project each weekend, to just keep
Mhm.
ticking away at the little things now that we need to hang pictures and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. That
yeah,
stuff.
pretty
That
good.
stuff, it feels good to get done, but it also can feel kind of tedious sometimes. Like, oh God, there's so much little stuff to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's easy to procrastinate those things. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
we'll do it in a weekend. Oh yeah, that'll only take a couple hours. And so you just don't
Yep.
do it. And pretty
Yep.
soon you've
A
got
year later, you're like, we have
this.
no pictures on our walls.
I know they're still sitting up in the spare bedroom. I know.
What are in these boxes in the living room?
I know. Well, we have wine in our boxes in our living room. Thank you, Dusty Neighbor Wines, for for contributing to our like makeshift coffee table on the side or whatever. But I have a wine rack coming that's going to go in the pantry that will fix that problem. It's a good problem
Box
to
of
have,
wine that's a side table.
Yeah.
You don't have to use a coaster.
Just like that, we're back in college. Like, whatever.
Oh, well, good. Glad things are good.
So thanks. So today's topic is leaning into discomfort.
Let's get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice radio voice there.
Thank you.
Michael is all seductive with his discomfort.
It's my NPR voice.
You're reminding me of the Sweaty Balls skit.
Right. Hello and welcome to the show. Sweaty Balls. God, I haven't seen that forever.
Oh boy. Yeah, that's a great one. It'll come around Christmas time.
Yep,
They always have the SNL special, and the Sweaty Balls and the Dick in the Box are the two that are going to be on there. It's really good stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, discomfort.
Okay.
We're going to talk about not just discomfort, but like leaning into it, like being like, oh, hey, discomfort, let's get cozy. Kind of like that, right?
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
And
get your snuggie, your 2-person snuggie, and get discomfort right in there with you.
Get cozy, grab some popcorn, and just nuzzle into it.
Get uncomfortable.
I think this is important for our line of work in particular, because I mean, I don't know about you, but I run into this a lot with clients talking about, okay, so you want to make these changes. What's standing in the way, or what has, deterred you in the past, or, tell me a little bit more about what has worked and what hasn't. And many times you are confronted with this obstacle, which ends up being, as we'll dive into this here in a little bit, it ends up being more what we tell ourselves and what's created in our minds versus an actual, like, tangible obstacle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times, and maybe that's a good place to start with, just like there's different types of discomfort. Like if you're trying to exercise more, there may be like physical discomfort, right? Like you may be sore from workouts. It may be just physically challenging, to do these workouts. You may be initially like maybe a little bit lower energy as your body adapts. If you are, trying to meal plan more or include more nutrient dense foods in your, your diet, that kind of stuff, it may be discomfort. There may be discomfort in like unsure of how to do these things well, of how to cook new things, of maybe feeling comfortable, like managing like portions. If you're, cooking for a few days, there's discomfort there. If you're looking at like, why do I eat the way I eat? Why do I not take better care of myself? Why isn't this a priority? There may be some discomfort in looking at patterns and beliefs about yourself. If someone's, trying to lose weight or starting a weight loss journey, or just journey of getting healthier, there may be discomfort in facing things like your past attempts. And like we've talked about before, that script and that, that always comes up the same, and addressing that. And so there's a lot of different ways I think that we can, that there's a lot of different types of discomfort out there when we're looking at making improvements or bettering ourselves that we might run into. It can be a variety of things. So I think that's just important to put out there from the start.
Yeah. And it's important to know yourself well enough to acknowledge what kinds of discomfort are, maybe more acceptable for you or easier for you to confront and deal with. For example, the physical discomfort for me, because of my years of training, I can handle that very well. Like I know how to manage it. I have that experience of coping with it and working through that. But there are other types of discomfort that I struggle with, and that I'm still kind of, learning my way of navigating that and even acknowledging in myself. And I think that is the biggest thing, is becoming aware of what kinds of things, like when you do start feeling that discomfort, the first step is acknowledging what you're feeling right now. And we talked about that with our name that emotion. I mean, we've talked about this in a lot of podcasts, but I mean, step one is truly like acknowledging that, oh, this does not feel good to me. Or maybe it's when you're starting to avoid something or pivot away from it or distract yourself from it, or do, whatever mechanisms you have put into place to answer that discomfort. But you really have to just acknowledge that, like, oh, this is making me uncomfortable, and just kind of observe that and sit with it. I think is really important as we start out with this.
Yeah. And two, I think it's important to maybe make this distinction. Maybe I should have made it earlier, that there are obviously situations that are uncomfortable that are unhealthy, right? Like there are certain things where like, I'm uncomfortable with this situation. That's different than what we're talking about. If you're working with someone who seems to be fueling unhealthy relationships with food or exercise, like that kind of discomfort, being uncomfortable situation, like that's a different thing, right? Like we're talking about discomfort that is like there's somewhere you're needing to get or wanting to go, and there's something in the way that keeps you from getting there, or something that deters you from doing or implementing healthier things in your life, that kind of discomfort. So not that anyone was confused, but I feel like we just need to say, like, okay, we're not talking about all types of discomfort here, right? We're talking about ones that are limiting or inhibiting you from being a healthier person. So
yeah. And I read this really great article by a therapist out in Maryland. Actually, I just like Google searched, some just learning from the experts in this, because it is a psychological sort of phenomenon, like this leaning into discomfort, and some of the different therapies that are involved in helping people through this. And she says, so this is by Laura I'm gonna butcher her last name.
Don't think about it too much. Just go through it. Just do it.
Laura Golajuk, I guess. She's in Bethesda, Maryland. Okay, I'll put the link in our show notes. So in case you want to read this and investigate a little further, but
And try to say
she,
her name yourself.
yeah, and see if you can do it better than me. Um, she says leaning into discomfort can open us up to things that we did not know were possible. By running from or reacting against discomfort, we often create a picture in our head of how horrible it will be. I'll get rejected. It will be awkward. She'll think less of me. Starting the practice of leaning into discomfort can show us how not so scary certain things can be after all. Though it's counterintuitive, leaning into discomfort can allow us to grow personally, gain confidence, and strengthen our relationships. And I just thought that was a beautiful is sort of overview of why we want to talk about this, because it really is like this, like you're approaching a hurdle and you just stop in your tracks and you're like, oh, no, 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 I'm going to trip. I'm going to fall. It's going to be embarrassing. I'm a failure, whatever it is, that story you tell yourself. And you kind of jump to conclusions, so to speak. And if you actually kind of think about it and sit with that discomfort a little bit and think about, well, what are the other possible outcomes? Or what does this say about me? And how can I, move forward with that?
Right.
I think that is a really key piece for people to, and we'll talk a little bit more about some other therapeutic models that kind of have that structure, but it can teach you something super valuable about yourself. And remember that our experiences are some of the most powerful learning tools that we have, and some of the most effective strategies that will serve us in the future. So if you can experience that, like facing that discomfort, kind of leaning into it and moving through it, man, that is super powerful.
Yep. Completely agree. And I think a lot of times, like discomfort, these discomforting situations or hurdles, like you said, whatever they are, a lot of times they're the doorways to new places. You know what I mean? And like we're in a room of what we know and what's comfortable and how we live our life and how we eat and move our body and things we tell ourselves and our relationships, everything, right? Like we're in this room. And if we're going to experience anything new or different, we got to walk through the door and go into a new room, right? But like a lot of times I think that discomfort is the doorway. And it's like we don't want to go into the other room because we don't know what it's going to be like. We don't know what to expect. We don't know how we're going to interact and live within these new things. And we're not sure that we can do it. You know what I mean? And so we often just kind of like cripple ourselves because like, I'm not even going to like try to go through there. And I'm just going to stay here with what I know and what's comfortable. And I'm sorry.
You have a little visitor.
I'm sorry. Not right now.
I think this also, I know.
Well, hold on, just let me finish my thought. So like I got it. So if we stay in that room and we don't go through these doors of discomfort or whatever, like nothing's going to change. Like it's not very often that like new things and new spaces of health just like walk into the room we're in, right? Like,
yeah, and they're
hey,
so
let me come to you.
And they're so yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like we've got to step out of what we're currently in, what we currently know and what we currently do, if we're going to have anything be different. And that usually requires at least to some degree, some level of discomfort. Okay, you talk. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. One of the other leaders in just this thought process and this concept of leaning into discomfort that I wanted to highlight is, of course, one of my heroes, Brene Brown. This to me, the way she explains this and why we get so stymied by discomfort makes sense the way she explains it. So she says that our brain is wired above all else for survival. So the minute we have a threat, whether it's anxiety, fear, shame, whatever the threat is, our brain says, give me a story. And so she talks about our brains understand narratives really well. And so our brain wants a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like, give me a story that tells me who is safe, who's good, who's bad, who's dangerous, what I should do here to stay safe and to survive. And I think that's, we're talking about survival. For some people, it's like, oh, making a new recipe or going to the gym or trying a new exercise or joining a group of some kind and putting yourself out there socially. This all goes back to that human need of safety and survival. And I think this is something Brian Fretwell would probably just eat up talking about this too. But it's important to just ask yourself, what's the story I'm telling myself about that situation? And for me, that just makes so much sense because, first of all, it's creating space between you and that discomfort and fear so that you're not just in it and one with it and it's not part of your identity. You're sort of creating this, oh, there's a story that I'm telling myself about this. And using that word story also just takes me back to like a child with make believe, and like you make up a story. And so it sort of puts me in this space where this doesn't have to be the reality. This is what I'm telling myself about this based on the tools I have available, the information I have available, and maybe my experience. And then she goes on to say, in this haste, like your brain is all trying to make sense of something really quickly, but it overlooks something very important, which is our need for discomfort and vulnerability in a real relationship. So understanding that in order to have real world experiences and relationships, you have to have a level of discomfort and acknowledging and approaching that in a different way instead of just constantly being in that flight response or avoiding it or give me safety. And of course, this is, we're saying this in, we're not psychologists and we're not, therapists. And there are probably listeners who have undergone like loads of traumatic experiences and different things that put you in this space. And that's totally understandable. What we're trying to present is just maybe a better understanding of why that is and being able to acknowledge it and build some awareness around it. And then hopefully a few tools for stepping beyond that.
Absolutely. And I think, like whether like we have a hard time with leaning into discomfort and we struggle with the story we tell ourselves for like really traumatic reasons or for small reasons or whatever, right? Like that's what we struggle with. And I think one of the best ways to help ourselves get beyond that is to face discomfort in small, doable ways, right? Like, and kind of expose ourselves to it.
Yeah.
And then
like
give
exposure
ourselves,
therapy.
give ourselves proof that, okay, I can handle some discomfort. I can lean into challenging, hard, uncomfortable places. And not only am I okay, but I can also like thrive in them. And then even if that's, like, I don't know, really small things about just taking care of some self-care stuff in the day, that muscle that we use or whatever, the strength that we develop in that, even though it's not as severe as like limiting beliefs from abuse or whatever, it's the same thing. And the better we get at using that muscle or whatever that helps us be bold and be brave and step into places of discomfort and comfort and see what it has for us, it's all going to play into the same thing. And I think a lot of the ways that we can overcome huge things, right, and change big stories is by proving to ourselves we can overcome little things and change little stories. And the more we can do that, I think it really plays out into sort of this really long-term picture health where we're really overhauling like how we see the world and ourselves in it and that kind of stuff. And I really believe, because I've seen it, I've seen clients like be like, okay, like I see myself differently because I've been like dedicated to eating more vegetables and taking care of myself. And because these things play out into other big things, and so it goes back to that whole, like, there are no small things. Like, sure, when we say it, like we can focus on small things and small changes, but they're not small at the same time. They're huge.
Right. They
because
add up. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And they take the same, maybe a very small version of it, but the same sort of like, I'm going to step into somewhere new. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to take the risk of shedding the story I know and maybe writing a new one. And
Mm-hmm.
even though it's small and maybe less important than dealing with these major, huge things in your life, it's the same kind of thing. And
Yeah.
if we can learn to do a little bit of it, we can learn to do a little bit more and more and more. And I mean, I've seen it with clients where it's just like, wow, this
Yeah,
stuff has really
totally.
played out into like, I'm going to therapy now and ready to face some stuff because I feel like I can do it. And it's like,
Yeah.
holy shit. Like we're
Yeah, I
just eating
know. I
vegetables and
know.
exercising and drinking water.
And
And
all
it
of a
just, it plays
sudden,
out that way. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and that exposure to those small things is something that I use a lot with clients who have disordered eating practices, or they're
Mhm.
chronic dieters, or um, emotional eaters. Often I will ask, what's that story you tell yourself about that food or that situation? And for example, with someone who has disordered eating, and they have this belief system that is firmly in place that if I eat this category of food or this type of food, then X will happen, whatever it is, something bad is going to happen. And so it holds them in this place of fear that this bad thing is going to happen. And so if we approach that, so I'm thinking of one client in particular where I'll suggest like certain types of snacks to fuel the workout and certain types of things, and this client will constantly lean away from those suggestions and stick within their level of comfort of, this is a safe snack for me, so I am going to only eat this kind of food over and over and over and over again. So then when we start confronting and getting closer and closer to that point of discomfort, it will finally come out that, oh, well, that's a food on my no list, and I'm not going to eat that certain food because this is what I think will happen. I'll gain weight. This is my belief system that's in place. So then we start kind of working through like, okay, if that food on your forbidden list is part of this whole story of discomfort, can we, or those foods, like we have a whole list, right? Pick one or two that you feel like you can actually introduce that into your eating pattern in the next week. And let's talk about how that feels. And let's talk about what happened and what didn't happen when that food was introduced. So you're just like creating some boundaries around that exposure. You're not saying you have to eat this every day for the next whatever, but it's really just saying, let's open this up to the possibilities and then let's observe what goes on. And over time, I mean, it's a very gradual process, this whole exposure, therapy, and just taking these small steps that you talk about. But man, it adds up over time to where then you can help the client see, like, do you remember when you first tried this little step and it was so uncomfortable? And now look at you, now look at what you can do. It's really empowering for people. And then
Very.
beyond just that single experience, whatever you're trying to, help them accomplish, the deeper learning is that I can do those hard, uncomfortable things. I can
Yeah.
confront that discomfort. So it becomes like this identity that I can
Mhm.
do those things. It's very powerful and often life-changing for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it can revolutionize someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen people go from like, just like you're saying, just not a lot of belief in themselves and their ability to accomplish a lot, and to like, oh yeah, I can do things,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's, Aaron and I were talking about this before we started recording, that there's just this, I think a lot of times when we talk about discomfort, we we talk about like the new places to step into that are going to be
Mm-hmm.
challenging or whatever, but we don't talk a lot about the places we're currently in. And what we don't realize a lot is that, well, yes, stepping into new places and pushing into places of growth is almost always, at least to a degree, uncomfortable. It's challenging, it's not easy, right? Staying where we are is usually really uncomfortable. We just
Yeah.
have accepted it as the way it is, or we're used to it, or we're okay with allowing it, right? Like I think about if someone is looking at like, just taking better care of themselves, and that feels overwhelming or scary or, whatever, something that they're like, I don't know if I want to face this. Well, they may be in that decision making a very, maybe not conscious choice, but making the choice to stay in places where they feel like crap and they have no energy, and their relationships are suffering because their physical health sucks so much, and they're not sleeping, and they're not, and they have high, medical bills because they're in poor health and they're on all these medications and all this stuff. And that's a serious discomfort. We just know it. We're used to it.
It's familiar.
We know, yeah, we know how to exist in it, but it sucks. And it probably sucks way worse than the areas you might have to step into of discomfort to lead to new and healthier places. But it's like, we know it, and it's that room we're in, right? And at least we know how to interact with it and what to expect and stuff. And so we just stay there. And I think a lot of times we choose higher levels of discomfort than lower levels of discomfort just because we know them, know? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I would encourage people, like, if you heard that description and you're like, oh boy, that's hitting home, like, that's a really good point. I would encourage you to just, sit with that and think about it, maybe talk through it with, a friend or a therapist or a partner, and just see, like, man, what is this thing that seems to be kind of holding me back? And, ask yourself, what might the story be in that? If I step through this door, or if I lean into that discomfort, what could happen? What's possible? And I love asking yourself, but what if I succeed? But what if this really does work out? And that's something, talking about vulnerability, that's something I'm experiencing right now in my business, because I have this, what I think is a brilliant idea to help, the next generation of athletes, and work on this, sports nutrition program that also has a component of, body image and self-talk and confidence and mental skills. And I've got this idea, right? And I've been developing it for, well, over a year now. And I've piloted it, and I've, worked with parents and teens, and, really trying to get this together. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, whoa, I'm actually going to launch this and hold some sessions. And I am telling you, it is such a mind fuck that I'm just like, I am experiencing all kinds of weird discomforts. And I have this friend that's working on it with me, who's a dietitian and an athlete herself. And she's just so funny, because she'll be like, yeah, we should do this and this and this. And I'm like, oh, but then I have this weird hang up about, maybe not this, like the price, like maybe we'll do this, and maybe I don't know about putting this out on social media. Maybe we'll just hold off. It's a really bizarre place to be from someone who has literally put herself out there into several different realms and faced discomfort in so many different ways. Pro triathlon, whatever, launching my own business. But this, for some reason, is like really playing on some of those stories that I have going on in my head. And so I'm with y'all. If you're listening to this and you're thinking like, oh shit, I've got to confront this, I am doing this with you. So
100%.
We're all practicing this.
Yep. I face it every time I'm like doing a new course or anything. It's just like, oh, I should not be doing this. This is a bad idea. I don't think I should put this. Yeah. It's just part of it. But the more we do it, the easier it gets, and I think that's part of our personal growth is with anything, like the more we do something, the easier it is to do. And the more we adopt it, and not just change our behaviors, but like you were saying, Aaron, just like we change our identity. Like I just operate differently. Like Michael, hopefully I am different than I was from 5 years ago and 10 years ago and 15 years ago. And I'll be different in 5 years, because hopefully I continue to, in doable ways, face uncomfortable situations like this that make me go like, I shouldn't be doing this. Like everyone hate what I do, like that feeling of just like everything's going to be a failure, or you're going to flop, or you're not, whatever. And but the more you do it, the easier it gets to do. And then I think you get to build on that and step into bigger and bolder places. And that's how we really, over time, like just we really go through personal growth, and we really wind up being healthier, deeper, more empathetic, more well-rounded, just better human beings in the world. Because I know we all know people. So I'm 40. It's anyone in like the 40-ish range. I bet you all know people who are your age that are no different than they were when they were 20 or 25, right? Like as far as growth goes, like we all know those people. Most of us don't like spending a lot of time around those people because their growth is stunted, basically, right? Like they haven't developed and matured and grown in ways like we're supposed to. Like we're supposed to grow. We're supposed to evolve. We're supposed to get braver and bolder and this kind of stuff. I think that's where a lot of our like happiness and fulfillment with life comes from, when we're facing challenges and facing discomfort and growing. And I think that's why there's a lot of unhappiness now, is because we're too distracted to do it, or we don't want to, or we know whatever. We can make ourselves comfortable enough in our current discomfort that we can exist, and we can distract ourselves enough to not like really face those, or to have to see those things that are like big red blinking lights of like, this needs attention. Please do something about this. And it's like, but Netflix.
Yeah. Well, and you might notice this about maybe someone in your friends group or somebody that we all know that's very busy with what everybody else has going on. And sort of like, I mean, I will have conversations with, I don't have many of those people in my lives, but occasionally I'll have conversations with people where I'm like, what are they avoiding though? You know, if they're so busy with what everybody else has going on, what's happening in their world that they're, you know, kind of struggling with. And sometimes that helps me just in those social situations, instead of feeling like I need to get dragged into, you know, this gossipy conversation or like focused at comparing what everybody else is doing. I'll kind of bring it back to, but yeah, that doesn't really reflect what I have going on in my life or what is important to me. And so I think that's another, you know, thing when we're talking about social discomfort, understanding how certain comments or situations bring about that discomfort, and just think about, what does that say about that person that's bringing this up or that says those things, you know? And understand, what does it say about me that I reacted that way, or that I had that thought, you know? Maybe it does hit home, and maybe that is something that I need to work on. And then just one of the things when you're talking about growth, and that's how we grow as humans, I have this quote by Susan David, who is a Harvard Medical School psychologist, and she's the author of Emotional Agility. And her quote is, "Discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life." And I just love that. Like,
I like that a
if
lot.
you're going to find growth and meaning and purpose in your life, you are going to have to encounter and lean into uncomfortable situations. Just a fact.
Well, yeah. And I think about things like, even just beyond like taking care of ourselves personally, like I think about like relational health, like the strongest relationships I have in my life are the ones that I have often, or together we have often leaned into discomfort, uncomfortable places. Like, this is a sucky conversation that we need to have. And let's figure out how to get through it. Because let's be honest, I mean, the hard conversations, they suck, right? Like they're just not fun.
Yeah, they never feel good when you're having them.
No, but a lot of times they feel great afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Like even if they don't go well, I think internally a lot of times it's like, oh, it's over with. Like, and even if there's fallout to deal with now, like that big step is done. That thing that's been hanging over our head is done. And that feels good. But if they go well, you know, and like that just automatically creates more depth and richness to that relationship, which like this, you know, Susan David saying that's more meaning in your life. Like when we have deeper relationships and we're more connected with people, and we know that it's okay to risk, right? Like we're going to put this thing out here and we got to figure it out, or this may change things, and let's commit to figuring it out together. Like there's such value and meaning in that. And I mean, I think this quote absolutely applies for, just self-care too. But just thinking about that with like just relationships and stuff, like discomfort is how we have meaningful experiences and relationships. And if we don't have those, that's a hard way to live life,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And as you're saying that, and you use the word like acceptance and commitment, and I wanted to share this passage. So I'm reading this book by Brad Stuhlberg. I've mentioned him no fewer than 100 times on this podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe
And
200. 3 times every episode.
I love his perspective, his research, his philosophical understanding and explanation of these different, concepts of why we behave and think the way we do. And he often relates it to peak performance, which is the first book that he wrote was Peak Performance. Which I love reading that kind of stuff, particularly from the athletic performance, standpoint, but also just, being an entrepreneur and really being engaged in that growth mindset. So I'm reading his book, The Practice of Groundedness, and he talks about acceptance and commitment therapy, which again, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't get into the weeds too much on this, but I'm going to read to you how he describes this, because he really talks, it definitely supports everything that we're discussing here about leaning into discomfort. So acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT for short, in a nutshell, suggests that when you're in a difficult or scary situation, be it physical, emotional, or social, resisting it almost always makes it worse. Far better is to accept what is happening, to open yourself up to it, to feel it deeply and let it be there. And then you've got to commit to living your life in alignment with your innermost values anyway. I love that he puts that anyway in there, because you're not pivoting or avoiding. It's just, I'm accepting this. Like you're fully owning that this is part of me and this is what I'm feeling. And I'm choosing to do this anyway. And then he goes on to say, you feel what is, you accept what is, you see clearly what is. And instead of running away from what is, you carry it with you and take productive action. So good. Because again, you're everything like Michael just was explaining with, this growth and moving beyond what you currently are. You're also accepting what currently is happening and maybe the feelings you're having and this ickiness, whether it's with a conversation, like you were just saying, or, it's a social situation or it's physical discomfort. I mean, I use this kind of thing with training, like to just, commit to this physical discomfort that you are going to feel when you're doing threshold intervals or whatever it is. And then you move forward into it anyway and see what's on the other side of that. Yeah. I think it's really good stuff.
That's a great quote. What's the name of that book again? Living in... It is
The Practice of Groundedness.
Not even close.
It's by Brad Stuhlberg. Yeah, not even close. Samsonite. I was way off.
I was going to say living in groundedness.
And someday when I lean into my discomfort, I'm going to email Brad Stuhlberg and see if he'll come on the podcast with us. But
okay, buddy, you heard her. Hold her to it. She committed. Okay, by the time this airs, will you email him? So you have like a week and a half? 10 days? You can do it.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay.
I'm putting it on my to-do list right now.
Look at this.
Look at me. I'm taking action.
In real time, we are seeing someone lean into discomfort. This man, Aaron.
And even as I write this, even as I write this on my to-do list, I'm like, shit, what am I going to say? How am I going to do?
It's all right. It's all right. Before we started recording, we were talking about method actors. And so this is Erin being a method podcaster. As we're talking about it, she's doing it. This is unbelievable.
Look at me go.
Look at you go.
So I had one other aspect that I wanted to talk about that you and I both mentioned before we hit record today, was about emotional eating. And I think that this is a really, I hint on it earlier when I was talking about disordered eating and some of that exposure therapy kind of stuff. but emotional eating is a much broader term. And someone who, I mean, we all are emotional eaters. So it's not like a disordered eating behavior necessarily to play on emotions and respond with food habits.
Yeah. And it's not a bad thing all the time either. Like, yeah,
Yes,
it can be a
absolutely.
beneficial, healthy thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. It is okay to answer some of those emotions with like a box of Cheez-Its or like tuck into a pint of ice cream. Like it, yeah, fully acceptable on some
Or
occasions.
what about a share size of gummy bears?
Okay. Do you share it though?
No,
No.
no. They have these bag of gummy bears they call share size. And I'm like, get out of
Yeah.
here.
What are you talking
This is
about? That's a
ridiculous.
serving.
This is tonight's snack. The whole
Yeah.
thing.
So I like to remind people that when we're having these conversations about eating habits, so something that I ran into a lot, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, was people working from home and they would find themselves in their kitchen or pantry and they didn't really know why. They weren't really hungry, and they maybe had a shitty phone call with a colleague or a meeting that didn't go the way they wanted, or they have a big project that they need to start now. And all of a sudden they're faced with like Michael and I were joking that we'll like go through the to-do list and do all the easy, like 10-15 minute little items. And then we're like, okay, it's time to start the big hour-long block of like meaningful work into this thing. Oh, let's go eat some gummy bears instead.
Yeah.
Let's go grab
Maybe
some trail
time for a
mix.
break.
Yeah. And I think we are all, subject to that procrastination can be a form of emotional eating. So again, sit with that a little bit. Why is that uncomfortable? Why is that project or that conversation or that email or taking that action in your work life or whatever it is? It could be in your personal life too. Why is that leading to that discomfort and avoiding it with food and distracting yourself with food? I mean, that takes 15-20 minutes to go like have a snack, or maybe just 5 for you to finish off that box of gummy bears. I don't know. But
well, yeah. Do you know how I eat gummy bears?
yeah, you've said this by the handful, like
Yeah,
gobs of them at once.
Yeah, it's the only way to eat gummy bears. You don't eat one at a time. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I just want to know if you knew like what you're saying there. Like,
I do know.
It's not going to take long.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is something that we run into. I think you've probably worked with clients too that have these tendencies to like they kind of butt up against something that's not comfortable, or they're not sure they want to approach this situation. And so, let's distract ourselves with food or avoid it with food or put it off. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing. I think kind of a point we've been dancing around a little bit is that this uncomfortable stuff, like whether or not we choose to like use that room example, right? Like whether or not we choose to walk through the door's there, right? Like we can avoid it and pretend it's not there. It's there. And anything different, we want anything different, it's beyond that door. Like we have to go through the discomfort to get there. So even if we choose to distract ourselves or ignore it or pretend it's not there, it's there, whether we admit it or not. You know what I mean? And so I think I really like the quote you said earlier. Where was it?
Discomfort's the price of admission to a meaningful life. That quote?
No, it was leaning into the discomfort means being present. Right. And so if we are present and mindful and aware of what's going on, we're going to be like, there's the door. And I know that anything different is beyond. Now we can pretend it's not there. Right. And maybe even like forget. Like I think
go check Facebook and pretend it's not there. Like
and we can ignore it long enough that we kind of forget about it, right? But it's still there. And so whether or not we take action or acknowledge it or whatever, like those ways forward are there waiting for us, right? Like we can choose to stay where we are and have more of the same, which a lot of us really would like to not have more of the same. because if we're honest with ourselves, it's not fun. It sucks. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's not as healthy as it could be. It's not as satisfying as it could be. Life has less meaning. Or we can be aware, we can be honest with what's right there in front of us and take that risk. And I realize that's not an easy thing to do for a lot of us, by no means. And I don't think we're saying that, but I think it's something you have to be willing to do if you want anything to be different.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that it dovetails into one of the final points I wanted to make again from this brilliant book I'm reading. Talks about how we sort of live in this world of, everything's positive and rosy and, I'm just crushing it. And it's, yeah, it's important to have a positive mindset, I think, and to, again, ask yourself what could go right? Like, what if this does go right? What if I step through that door and things actually are better on the other side? What if my discomfort is actually less? It's just unknown right now. So I'm, trying to avoid it. I think all of that mindset is very different than trying to convince yourself that what is happening right now in my world is all positive and great and awesome. It's really important to accept that, like, being human involves a certain amount of discomfort and vulnerability. And something he talks
for it.
Oh, I think so. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because if you look at any understanding of the word growth, it doesn't happen without some transition or transformation of some kind. And usually that transformation is unstable and uncomfortable and unknown and all these other things. I mean, if you look at nature in any capacity, that is, something that we've learned.
Yeah, because we look at, I don't want to take away from your quote, but just real quick.
No, go ahead.
Because we hear the word discomfort. I think most of us hear the word discomfort, myself included, and our immediate thought is negative, bad, right? Like discomfort we associate with an unwanted thing, as opposed to what if discomfort is something that we look for, but willingly walk into, because we know that going through the uncomfortable thing leads us to somewhere new, that things are going to be better. You know what I mean? And it's like we try to figure out how to like hack discomfort. How do I get around it? How do I avoid the discomfort to get to their side? It's like, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't.
That's the whole point. Yeah.
If you want to get to the other side, get uncomfortable and accept that maybe this isn't a bad negative thing. Maybe it's a really positive thing. Maybe being uncomfortable and living in discomfort in periods is the healthiest thing you can do. So anyway, that's the point I wanted to make.
I think, well, and I think I've mentioned Chris McCormick, who is one of the best triathletes of all time. In his book, he talks about his approach to the physical pain that comes with training and racing at the level he raced for decades, really. And he looked at pain as his friend. Oh, hello, my old friend. There you are again. And he really just embraced it as, I'm doing this right. If pain comes and greets me, okay, I'm doing it the right way. And so I think that's to kind of piggyback on your point, that maybe we should all rethink of how this discomfort conversation plays out. And instead of constantly trying to convince yourself it's a bad thing, embrace it as being part of living. And man, I'm doing this right. I tell people that all the time, if you're having some discomfort with this, or you're having strong feelings about something, it's probably worth investigating where those feelings are coming from and what's on the other side of that. So in Brad's book, again, he talks about Marcus Aurelius saying, it's normal to feel pain in your hands and feet if you're using your feet as feet and your hands as hands. And for a human being to feel stress is normal if he's living a normal human life. I love it. You're using your feet as feet and your hands as hands. So there's going to be pain. If you're using your gifts in your workplace the way you should, there's going to be some kind of discomfort and pain there. I think it's important.
If you're doing what you're supposed to do as a human being, it's gonna suck at times, but that doesn't mean it only sucks or sucks forever.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
So
That's a good quote.
I know this
So
book
that
is
was
full
Marcus
of them.
Aurelius, is that you said?
That was Marcus Aurelius. Yeah. So I'm not even halfway through the book, and I'm just like, I've got you can see that I've got like all kinds of sticky notes and markers and whatever. And I'm gonna let one of my friends read it after me because I was like, this is such a great book. So
Cool.
anyway,
I like it.
so we've talked about a few different strategies, and if you're interested in therapeutic models, there's a few different ones we mentioned here. ACT, exposure therapy. And yeah, will put some links in the show notes here so you can see some of the stuff that we referenced and looked up. But I think it's important, lean into your discomfort, see what's on the
Yep.
other side, and let us
Yep.
know.
And do it in doable ways. Like you don't have to
Mhm.
take on all the discomfort at once, right? Like just do it in ways like, again, okay, last time when you use this room example, but like you can walk into that room and then come back. Like you can go
Totally.
into that and be like,
Yes.
oh, what's it like? Okay, let me go back to home base and like recalibrate. Like it's not like we abandon everything we know,
Right.
like, and I think it's important, like test the waters and come back to a safe place. Test the waters a little bit longer, come back to a safe place, go out there a little bit longer, maybe make a sandwich and then come back, like just like it's not if you walk through the door, then you just live there forever now. Like, I don't think that's the way it works. We do it in ways
Yeah,
that feel safe, that feel manageable, that help us build trust in ourselves that we can do this. So yeah, do it in
yep,
bite-sized, manageable
absolutely.
ways. Yeah.
Great. Bite-sized. That makes me
Bite-sized.
hungry. It's getting close to snack time on my end.
Is it? Is it snack time?
It's snack
Do you
time.
have do you
Yes.
have some Cheez-Its and a juice
I have
box?
I don't actually, but I could find something for sure. Don't you worry. This girl has snacks.
Don't worry, I know how to snack.
SNAX.
I think of all the things we have in common, a love to eat is probably one of the highest on the list.
Yes, I
Yeah.
have very few friends that are disinterested in food. I do have those friends that really are not motivated by food, but
Maybe
I
you need some different friends there.
I can't relate. Like,
I know. We have a neighbor and she loves to cook too. And sometimes we'll get together and she and I always wind up talking about food. And it's just like, how are you guys, everybody else not excited about this? Like,
I
why are you
know.
excited about to
I
have
know.
this conversation about food? I don't get it.
My
I get
friend
super
Justine
excited
and
about food.
I, when my friend Justine and I first met years and years ago, we would go for trail runs together or bike rides, and inevitably we would start talking about food and like, simple recipes we'd put together that are combinations that are good, or
Mhm.
a new product we tried, and we're like, man, we talk about food a lot. Like, this is our love language.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things. Like after my family, it might be my favorite thing to talk about.
I know. I agree. Yep. So,
Oh, okay.
meaning
Good
in the
stuff.
mundane.
Yeah. So a week or two ago, I had a conversation with a client and she mentioned this book and I don't have the book with me and I can't think of the title offhand. It's something like The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, something like that.
Oh, it's an interesting title.
Yeah. Anyway, so she was telling me about this book and I was like, I haven't heard of it. She's like, oh my gosh, you got to read it. So that was that conversation, I think a week or two ago. What's today? Wednesday. So maybe Monday, I think, on my doorstep was a package addressed to me. And I was like, I didn't order anything. I opened up and it says book with this nice little note from her, just thanks for
Yeah.
being you, Michael, kind of thing. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. And the artwork was really cool on it. It's like watercolors, right? On the cover. And I was like, oh, that's cool looking. And I kind of like thumbed through the book, just like kind of, through the pages. And I'm like, oh, there's artwork on every page. This really cool watercolor that this author, I believe, did. But very few words. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And so I don't know, it's maybe 80 pages, 100 pages, but there's like probably tops 30 words on a page, right? It's more like a
Mhm.
picture book kind of. But I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I was really intrigued by this artwork and I was intrigued by the concept. And I read a little bit and I read the intro and the author was basically like, start wherever in the book, start wherever you want.
What?
And I was like, oh, this is interesting. So I
Wow.
was really intrigued, right? So we had dinner and I was like, I'm just gonna go like sit on the bed for a little bit and read this. And so it's just after dinner, between dinner and bedtime, which is usually just kind of pretty relaxed time for us. Maybe we're doing baths or the girls are playing outside or something before bed. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna take this time, this kind of interesting time between dinner and bed and just read for a little bit. And I wound up reading the whole book, which isn't saying a lot because it's short, but it was this fantastic book about just these brilliant thoughts on relationships and kindness and love and who we are. And just like one of the quotes that that stuck in my head was, one of our greatest freedoms is how we respond. And I was like,
Oh, yeah, that's great.
that's really good. Just things like that. And it's just conversations between this boy and a mole and a fox and a horse. They kind of encounter each other
Oh
on
my
just
gosh.
life. And it was just like this, I don't know, it maybe took me 30 minutes to read, maybe, I don't know. It wasn't real long, but I was just like, this is freaking awesome because this artwork is so cool. The whole presentation was so cool. The things I'm taking from it are awesome. It was just like this unexpected, just kind of usually just chill time, in the evening where it's just kind of whatever. And I'm just like having this great experience reading this book I've never heard of. And I was just like, yeah,
Wow.
it was really cool. So thank you,
I
Lisa,
love it.
who is also does listener support for the show. So thank you for that. And thank you for the book. Yeah, it was a
Yeah, thank you,
wonderful
Lisa.
little evening.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
love those unexpected,
Mhm.
kind of, whoa, this is an existential experience, like reading through this and thinking about it.
Yeah, it gave me a lot to think about. Yeah. And it's something that I'll absolutely read with my girls because they'll love it because
Yeah.
it's like a picture book, but with like
Yeah.
these really deep, meaningful thoughts. Yeah.
So, mine, I actually just realized it yesterday as I was riding with a friend and telling her about my weekend.
Mhm.
Um, but it was kind of a late epiphany that, oh, that's my meaning in the mundane this week. So to back up to Saturday, Matt and I went for a ride with our buddy Troy, Uncle Troy, and he's not really our uncle, but we call him that because we've adopted
Mhm.
him. And we went for this great gravel ride on a route we'd never done before, epic views, fall colors, climbed to 7,500 feet to this lookout tower. I mean, it was just like this amazing ride. And then we, get back home and my friend is like, hey, let's have this impromptu fall dinner. We'll make soup and all this other stuff. So we buzzed over to her place and we just had like this really, really full Saturday of really great things.
Mhm.
And so Sunday, it was a beautiful day. It was like in the 70s and sunny. And I just had this like jonesing to go like get out on my bike and to be outside and go do something. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. I got to make the most of it. And I kind of had this
Mhm.
urgency that like, I got to go do something. And Matt, I described the little fence topper. Matt spent time Sunday
Mhm.
installing that. And so I was kind of just hanging out around the house, waiting for him to get done with that. So then we could maybe go ride. And so I took Riley outside a couple times and I made muffins and I watched some football. I did laundry and I just kind of puttered around the house all the while, just with this like almost anxiety that like I need to get outside and enjoy,
Mhm.
what's going on outside. And so that evening, Matt and I had a fire, our first fire pit out on our patio, and I was like, yeah, I really wanted to go ride today. I really wanted to spend more time outside. And then I was like, but I'm outside right now. And this is pretty freaking nice, and Sunday night football is our thing.
Mhm.
And so I was telling my friend about this yesterday. And we were just having that conversation about, sometimes you get caught up in that kind of comparison or that I need to always be doing something like,
Mhm.
epic and fun and meaningful. And this is how I spent this glorious fall day in the 70s is doing this big epic thing. And on the heels of Saturday was this big epic ride and stuff. And so I just realized like, she's like, it's really more about being content with how you spend your time. It doesn't matter to anybody else. And I was like, that actually is a really important takeaway for me this weekend. So Sunday was my meaning in the mundane because it was just super. That's really what it was. It was just kind of being around the house and not doing anything epic, even though I had it kind of in my mind that I needed to. And then realizing that at a later point that, like, that actually was a pretty nice, mellow, easy day. And I didn't need anything more than that. It was
Nice.
enough.
I like that. And that echoes so much of what we talk about, right? Like,
Yeah.
how if we can really be like mindful and present, often we are, and not just with food, but like satisfied with less than if we're distracted. You know what I mean? Like if we're not really in the moment, often we need more to feel satisfied or pleased or content or whatever. But if we're really like in the moment, I mean, often I think a lot of times if we're in the moment, we don't really need anything to feel content because we're just here and everything is here. And yeah, I like that. That's awesome. What a nice Sunday.
Yeah. I know. It was pretty chill and easy and it was great.
Awesome.
And we still have decent weather. So it's not like I missed anything. I think that FOMO kind of gets to us, So
yeah, for sure.
All
right.
All right.
Thanks
you,
everybody.
For listening. We'd love to hear your feedback. And
love to hear your feedback. Yeah.
We'll catch you next week.
Yep. Remember, like, rate, share, review, subscribe, all those things. There's a link below if you'd like to help support Middleish. If you listener support, you can do that there. Well, thank you, everybody.
Hey, thanks.